We are now officially live. Soti and welcome everyone. This is the weekly online Dhamma group where we attend with Venerable Dhamma, who is joining us from the Sirimangalo Center from Sri Lanka. We will start our session off by taking the 5 precepts together. Taking the 5 precepts is something that we do every week to help ground ourselves in morality, creating a foundation for us to clear for mental distractions and stay committed to our study. Is there anyone that's willing to lead the precepts today for us?
I can do it if you like.
Okay, Chi-Chi, you may begin whenever you're ready.
But I cannot see the 5 precepts online yet. Oh yeah, I can see now. Thank you. Hambande tisaranena saha pancha silani yajami dutiyampi hambande tisaranena saha pancha silani yajami Dadiyampi ahambande tisaranena saha pancha silani yajami.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhan saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhamman saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghan saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Buddhan saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Dhamman saranang Dutiyampi Sanghan saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Buddhan saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Dhamman saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Sanghan saranang gacchami.
Isarana-gamanang nititang
Hamabande.
Parnatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adena Dana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Kamesu micchācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kamisu mecha chara viramani sikkhapadan samadhiyami.
Musavada Viramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Musawara viramani sikkhapadan samadhiyami.
Surameraya Majjapamadatthana Viramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Sura Miraya Mija Pamadatana Viramani Sikkhapadan Samadhiyami.
Imani Pancha Sikkhapadani Silena Sugating Yanti Silena Bhoga Sampada Silena Nibbutting Yanti Tasma Silang Visodhaye.
Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you for participating and taking the 5 precepts with us, everyone. We will now transition into our reading. Right now, we are currently studying the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta by the late Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw. We have a stage core group that does the reading here, along with an audience who's listening along in Discord and on YouTube. We'll go in alphabetical order with the names, reading 2 paragraphs each. Right now we are at the section entitled Suffering as Not Getting One Wants. This is page 99 of the physical book. Edit, may you start us off today, please, for our first reader?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Suffering as not getting what one wants. The suffering of not getting what one wants is the suffering that arises from desire for some unobtainable object. Without practicing and developing the Noble Eightfold Path, the desire may arise. If only I were not subject to birth, aging, disease, and death. If only I were not subject to sorrow and lamentation. Of course, these wishes will not be fulfilled merely by wishing, and not getting what one wants causes mental anguish. Therefore, the Buddha described such desires as dreadful suffering. Here, the object of one's desire is not limited only to Nibbana, which is free from birth, aging, etc., but includes worldly gains and wealth, which also cannot be obtained merely by wanting them. Not getting what one wants is suffering. Suffering as the 5 aggregates. The 11 types of suffering, starting from the suffering of birth to the suffering of not getting what one wants, arise only because there are the 5 aggregates of attachment, upadana khandha, and they arise dependent on these 5 groups. In brief, therefore, the 5 aggregates of attachment are dreadful suffering.
Yeah, so suffering as not getting what one wants is really the culmination of the rest. He hints at that. He says, with relation to all the others, like birth, aging, disease, and death, the suffering really comes when you don't want that. And the more you don't want that, as with all the rest of the types of suffering. And even apart from all the others, if you focus on the five aggregates, if you just say the five khandhas, they're not really suffering in the sense that they're not unpleasant necessarily. But when you don't want certain experiences, certain aspects of the five aggregates, then of course they're suffering. And on a deeper level, and I think he's going to go into this, it's not just that the five aggregates are unpleasant. They're called suffering because they have no capacity to bring happiness. It means there's no aspect of experience. There's no experience that you could cling to and say, this will make me happy. So the essence of suffering is really that they're impermanent and uncontrollable and incessant. They only arise and cease. They don't go according to your whim. They don't turn on when you want them and turn off when you don't want them. They're constant. It's not, the experience is not something you can take a break from, so that you're bombarded with them. Another definition of the word suffering is an interesting one. Dukkha. Ka means to last. No, ka means something like to endure. So the ordinary meaning of dukkha means something that is hard to endure. But another meaning of it is that something that endures with difficulty, meaning something that is only momentary. So you might hold on to something and say, oh, this will make me happy, but it's dukkha in the sense it can't endure. It doesn't last. Dukkha is because of the impermanent.
Material and mental formations which form the objects of attachment are called aggregates of attachment. These five aggregates are: number 1, the aggregate of material forms; number 2, the aggregate of feelings; number 3, the aggregate of perceptions; number 4, the aggregate of mental formations; and number 5, the aggregate of consciousness.
So the word aggregate is not probably all that easy to understand in this context. The word khandha means something like heap. It's like a big pile of stuff. So what it means is that it's a collection of all types of, like if you have trash piles and you separate recycling out into recycling and non-recycling into recycling. You separate it out into different types. You have these khandhas, you have these heaps, that's all it means. All bodily experience or bodily aspects of experience are in the rupa khandha. All feelings are in the vedana khandha.
All
I think it's a bit of a
sentient
pejorative term because it almost implies, I'm not sure that it actually is, but it's a bit pejorative in the sense that it's kind of like calling them all trash. They're not like prized possessions that you put in a display case. They're just heaps of trash.
All sentient beings exist as such only with these five groups forming their substantive mass. They cling to their body, which is merely an aggregate of material forms, regarding it as I, my body, as permanent, etc. Hence, the group of material form is called the aggregate of attachment.
Very difficult to see this. Intellectually, it's easy to acknowledge that this is probably the case, but to actually see reality in this way and as a result to let go of it and to be free from the desire or the excitement or the interest in controlling it and making it the way you want it to be is a very difficult thing. So it's not something to be afraid of. Letting go is not something to be scared of. If you're attached to these things, there's no way you're going to accidentally lose something that is somehow valuable. The difficulty is in untying this tangle of confusion to actually see that you are causing yourself suffering and to truly let go of, or to truly see the suffering that comes from clinging to these things and truly let go of them. It's not an intellectual, it's not an argument you have to have with yourself or a work you have to do to convince yourself that you should let go of these things. Buddha is talking about the very truth of reality as experiences, and that these experiences are none of them worth clinging to. He's making a very bold claim with a lot of this very simple teachings. Something that is objectionable to most people because we desire and yearn for so much of what the Buddha describes as suffering. It's not a debate you have to have. It's just about seeing more clearly. Because if you see so clearly that you are absolutely sure that these things are satisfying and stable and controllable, then that's fine. That would be a great thing. And you'd have something that could truly satisfy you. But there's no such thing. It's just not the nature of experiences. Happiness cannot be dependent on experience. Happiness comes from being independent, not relying on this experience or that experience. It's not so much that you run away from these things. It's that you become independent of them. They still arise. Even for the Buddha, the 5 aggregates continued to arise, of course. The difference was he was independent of them. He had no delusion or illusion that somehow this experience or that experience would satisfy him, would make him happy.
The mental phenomena made up of consciousness and mental concomitants, cetasika, are also grasped at, taken to be I, my mind, it is I who thinks, as permanent. So the mental states are also known as aggregates. This is how attachment occurs on the groups of mind and matter as a whole.
Yeah, so I think what he's getting at here is the idea behind the word khanda as being a heap is that it's taken as one big thing, but the truth about a heap is that it's made up of lots of small parts that compose the heap. The idea behind this term khanda is that and that's why they use the word aggregate in English, is because it's not one atomic entity. It's lots of individual pieces and be broken up into things that are not self.
Aggregates of attachment on seeing. To consider each separate phenomenon in detail, the aggregates of attachment are conspicuous every time one sees an object. Likewise, they are prominent on every occasion of hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. At the moment of seeing, the seeing eyes, the object of sight and consciousness of seeing, are quite conspicuous. This consciousness of seeing is comprised of pleasant or unpleasant feeling, perception or recognition of the object seen, striving and inclining the mind to see, and the knowledge that an object is seen.
Yeah, so this is another important aspect of understanding the 5 aggregates, is that they're not entities that exist over time, like organs in the body. It's often misunderstood that these aggregates are a part of us, in the sense that, like, different regions of the brain are parts of us, or different organs in the body are parts of us. But that's not the truth of reality, and that's not the nature of the 5 aggregates. They're aspects of experience. They're parts of each experience. So at every moment of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, and thinking, there arises the 5 aggregates. They arise and cease. That's where they exist. So they're only heaps in the sense that they comprise many different kinds of things, or many different instances of things that happen so quickly and are so intertwined that they give the illusion of an entity, a being, a self, a soul, that sort of thing. But the truth is, every moment of seeing, one experience or an individual experience of the 5 aggregates.
People who cannot practice insight meditation, or those practicing who have not yet advanced to the stage of appreciating the nature of the 3 characteristics, remain attached to the eye, the sight, etc. They regard clear eyesight as I, as my eye, and as permanent. When they see the body and the limbs, the attachment arises. I see my own body. This is my hand. It exists permanently. Seeing other people, they appear as a person, a being, as enduring. Because of such arousal of attachment, the material forms of the eye and the object of sight are called the aggregate of attachment to form, Rupa Padana Kanda. In addition to pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling in seeing an object, there is also neutral feeling, which is not considered separately here to economize space. What is concerned with wholesome neutral feeling is included in pleasant feeling. What is concerned with unwholesome neutral feeling is included in unpleasant feeling. Both pleasant and unpleasant feelings give rise to attachments. It is I, it is my feeling, it is everlasting. I feel well, I feel terrible. Causing attachments in this way, pleasant or unpleasant feeling in seeing an object, is called the aggregate of attachment to feeling, Vedana Padana Kanda.
Yeah, it's worth stressing this idea of neutral feelings, because practically this is probably what gives the most difficulty to, most often comes up as a difficulty for a meditator. I mean, I guess besides pain, but it really depends on the individual. Pain is not actually generally that much of a challenge, because it's a challenge for different reasons, but it's very easy to note pain. It's just very unpleasant and can shake your resolve and make people doubt the practice or doubt their ability to do the practice. So it is a big problem. Pain becomes an issue because meditators have difficulty facing it. But neutral feelings are a special problem when they do arise, and they don't arise strongly for everyone, at least not in the beginning. But when they do arise, they're often ignored. And so it's important, what he says is true and important. It's important to acknowledge that neutral feelings should be understood in the same way as pleasant feelings, because they're generally liked. They're generally something that the meditator likes, wants more of, seeks out, and begins to arrange their meditation or orchestrate their meditation in such a way that, to the best of their ability, every time they practice, they feel them, right? So instead of being objective and neutral and facing head on whatever experiences arise, you sort of subconsciously direct yourself towards the arising of neutral feelings, and it becomes a real issue in terms of letting go, and even just seeing clearly, because you start to get the idea that it's something that's a part of you. I am calm. A very common thing, and it's such a surprise for meditators when we tell them to note the calm until it goes away. For some meditators, for those meditators who suffer from it, not suffer from it, but who suffer from attachment to it. You don't suffer from a calm feeling. There's nothing bad about the calm feelings, but there's also nothing wrong with the painful feelings. The issue with calm feelings is often they are not noted, and the surprise is that they do go away, because a meditator will often reply, well, it doesn't go away, it kind of just stays there, which is not true. And it's a sign that they're not seeing clearly, that they haven't really paid close attention. And the reason they don't is they're too busy enjoying it. They like it, and it can be a very subtle form of attachment, but at the very least, they will acknowledge that they prefer it. Or maybe they won't. Sometimes they don't even acknowledge that, but that is the truth, is that they generally do prefer, people generally do prefer calm feelings to no one's surprise. But when you do start to note the calm and note it until it goes away, it really opens up your meditation and allows for a much stronger mental state. Sometimes meditators will actually admit that they don't want to note the calm because they're afraid when they note it, it will go away. Which is a bad, an obvious sign of attachment, which is not a good thing. So just reminding meditators of this is very important. And we should all remember neutral feelings as an important part of our meditation. Don't think that he's trying to gloss over them. He's just saying you don't have to explain them anymore. You just talk about pleasant feelings and assume that people know you're also talking about neutral feelings. But when you feel neutral feelings, always make sure you're noting them just as you would pleasant feelings. It's an important part of the practice.
On perceiving an object, attachment arises in this way too. I recognize it, I don't forget it. So it is called the aggregate of attachment to perception, Sanyupadana Kanda.
He's just giving the Pali names for them all. Kanda means aggregate, Upadana means clinging or attachment. And the 5 aggregates are Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, and Vijnana. Those are the Pali words. So perceiving is probably the right word. It's just not something I'm really clear on, this word perceiving. Recognizing is Sanya is recognizing, and it really literally means that. The word perceiving is just a weird word to me because I never understood it correctly, and I think I've always used it wrongly. But sanya, if you look at the word sanya, just for edification purposes. Nya is this root meaning in regards to knowing. So it's where the word jnana comes from. And many other words. Jnana, what are the other words? Like vinyana is also from the root nya in regards to knowing. Sa means like together with. So sanya means to know that something is similar to something else. That's what recognition is. When you see something, if you can connect it to something that you've seen before, sanya arises. Ah, this is like that. That's what sanya is. So recognition is, I want to understand, what is this sanya aggregate? It's when it's the ability to recognize things, or the recognition of things, which is important because the commentaries point out that the proximate cause of mindfulness is something called tira sanya. Tira meaning strong or firm, and sanya. So it means sanya arises, and you recognize things. When you have pain, you know you're feeling pain. That recognition arises, but it's not tira. And it's a great explanation as to why we would use a mantra, why anyone uses a mantra for any type of meditation, and why we will use it in the practice of satipatthana vipassana. Because when you repeat to yourself, you feel the pain, you know it's pain, and you repeat to yourself pain, you're reaffirming that recognition, you're strengthening that recognition. That's exactly and a very clear explanation of what a mantra does, why mantra meditation is so popular in samatha and vipassana, and why it works. It strengthens the perception, and what does that? It strengthens the recognition, and what does that do? It keeps the mind focused on that recognition. So normally we recognize something, but then we react to it. Then the next one, sankhara, arises. We like it, we dislike it, we interpret it as being me, as mine. All of that other superfluous stuff arises, and you dodge that, you block that, you prevent that. Yani sotani lokasming sati tesang nivarayang. Whatever sota means stream. It's like an avenue for problems, like a road that leads you out, or a river that leads you out to the ocean of samsara. Whatever streams there are in the world, yani sotani lokasming, whatever streams there are in the world, and the world means our experience. Sati tesang nivarayang. Sati blocks them. Nivarayang means it's like it hinders them or prevents them. When you're mindful, it blocks all of that. A very important quote also to remember, that mindfulness is a block for all of that other stuff. These are the sorts of explanation that are really important, that I don't think get appreciated or talked about enough, to help people understand what is mindfulness, why we practice mindfulness the way we do, that we're not just coming out of left field, or it's not just an intellectual activity of repeating words to ourselves, labeling things. It's not really labeling. It's such a cold and it's a word that doesn't resonate well. I prefer the word mantra because people at least understand what you're doing and the roots it has in meditation tradition throughout history. Well, that's sanya. Sanya is an important entry point for mindfulness practice.
The will to see an object is volition, cetana. In the vocabulary of the text, it is termed incitement, exhortation, or urging. However, will or volition expresses its meaning quite clearly. Attention, manasikara, which goes along with volition, is pondering or inclining the mind towards an object. Then there is contact, phasa, which comes into play too, but as volition and attention are the predominant factors, I will mention only these two. There is attachment towards them too as I, or as enduring, hence these two mental concomitants of willing and inclining the mind involved in an act of seeing are called the aggregate of attachment to mental formation, Sankharupadana Nakanda. By mental formations is meant conditioning. In the case of seeing, it means bringing about conditions to accomplish the act of seeing.
Sankhara is a lot of different things, and he points out that he says that will and attention and volition are the predominant factors. The attachment here is when you want something and you say, I want it, or I prefer this, or I'm inclined in this way, or I'm good in this way, like when the mind is very good at inclining in a certain way. So you want to remember things and you feel like I have a good memory. You incline to remember something, or when you incline, you might think you have a good work ethic because you incline in this way or incline in that way. You might conversely think you have a bad work ethic or have poor attention span. And when you cling to that as me or mine, this is clinging to these aggregates, clinging to the way the mind works. Think about how much of our investment goes to how our mind works, trying to ensure that our mind works smoothly and the way we want it to, and fretting and worrying when it doesn't, and all the means and methods we use to fix or control the way the mind works. Sometimes intrusive thoughts arise and we don't want them to. We call these thoughts intrusive, the thoughts that we don't want, and we try our hardest to prevent them from arising. The way our mind works is truly terrifying, triggered by so much. We wish our minds worked in different ways, and so we suffer when they don't work in the ways that we want. It's mostly most terrifying for people as they get older and they worry about things like Alzheimer's, dementia. And then those who suffer from those diseases have it the worst. Fear and confusion, not understanding what's going on, not remembering your own family members. It all points to the fact that if you're attached to these things, you suffer. Stop attaching to them, you stop suffering. I met an old monk, one of the very famous monks in Thailand in our tradition. I met him when he was like 95. He was very old and on his way out, very much on his way out, and he seemed to have some form of dementia or Alzheimer's or something. But he was so peaceful and happy. He just sat there. And when he saw us came in, he turned to us and he smiled this huge smile. And he said something that I don't think anyone could understand, not even the people who spoke his language, his Burmese. And he smiled and said something and kind of got the sense that nobody understood what he was saying, and then turned back and stared off into space again. It's really quite a meeting. Because it didn't seem like, I mean, I don't know anything about him. Was he truly a strong practitioner? But he didn't seem bothered by his condition in the slightest. He seemed very, very much happy and seemed at peace. Imagine, no? Imagine being at peace with that.
Just knowing that an object is seen is I consciousness, which is also attached to as I see, I know, the I that sees is everlasting. Because of the possibility of such attachment, consciousness is called the aggregate of attachment to consciousness. Vijnana Khanda.
So vijnana is probably the biggest biggest source of attachment to self. All of the other things we can acknowledge that they come and go, but consciousness is who I am. I am conscious, right? Moment after moment after moment, it's still me conscious. And there's an interesting truth in the fact that I don't experience what you see, right? My seeing, or the seeing that's associated with me, with whatever you call this, is very much mine. I mean, it's very much, it's not mine. It's very much unique or specific to one individual. It's very easy to conceive of this as me or mine, but you're making a leap there. Just because something is in, let's say, one corridor and it's not in another corridor doesn't mean the corridor is a thing that exists, right? Yes, there is a individuality, and this is often described as the attabhava or attabhava. Anyway, which is it's a way of talking about the individual. Instead of saying I, me, just say attabhava imasming attabhave, in this individuality. Because it is separate. There is a separation between individuals. But it doesn't mean that each individual is an actual entity that exists from moment to moment. The suffering comes from the fact that it's not up to you what you see and hear and smell and taste and feel and think. The awareness is not something you can just turn off as you like. And in fact, the more you try to tune in only to what you like and tune out what you don't like, run away from those, plug your ears, leave the room, find ways to not experience things that you don't want to experience, the more triggered you are by those things, the more angry and upset, and to the point of rage, to the point of wanting to be violent towards others or towards yourself. You can't stop the experience. Seeking to do that, seeking to control the experience and only experience certain things, is a grave source of suffering.
To recapitulate. 1. At the moment of seeing, the eye and sight are the aggregate of attachment to form. 2. Pleasant or unpleasant feeling is the aggregate of attachment to feeling. 3. Recognizing or remembering the object is the aggregate of attachment to perception. 4. The will to see and inclining the attention to the object is the aggregate of attachment to mental formations. 5. Just knowing that the object is seen is the aggregate of attachment to consciousness.
To note as seeing, every time an object is seen, enables one to know the 5 mental and physical aggregates as they really are, and having known them, to remain at the stage of just seeing, not becoming attached to them as I or mine, as permanent, pleasant, as self, etc. To understand the purpose of noting every phenomenon I have coined the following aphorism. Fundamentals of insight meditation. Number 1. By contemplating what is insight developed. Number 2. By noting as they really are the 5 aggregates which may cause attachment. Number 3. When and for what purpose should they be noted? Number 4. They should be noted at the moment of arising to cut off attachment. 5. Failing to note at the moment of arising opens the way to attachment to them as permanent, pleasant, or self. 6. Noting the 5 aggregates every time they arise dispels attachment. Thus, clear insight as to their impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and insubstantiality is developed. In number 5, at the moment of arising, means at the moment of seeing, hearing, etc. In number 6, every time they arise, connotes every act of seeing, hearing, etc. as it occurs.
I think this is the point where he would have the audience recite these things. If you ever listen to, we have a Burmese member here. I know this is a common thing in Myanmar, for the teachers to have the audience repeat after them. It's a thing in Thailand, it's an old thing in Thailand as well. The old teachers who used to do this. I think this is the sort of thing he would actually have people recite with him. That's sort of the meaning here. This is a special part of the teaching where he wants to really condense it into things that people can easily understand, because he's done a lot of sort of heavy intellectual talk up until this point. To boil it all down, what does it boil down to? These 6 things. And they're not, I don't know that he would actually number them 1, 2, 3 like that. I'm not really sure. But in the text I have actually on the website, it's not numbered, even though at the end he does say 5 and 6. But they're questions and answers, right? 1 is a question, 2 is the answer, 3 is a question, 4 is the answer. And then 5 and 6 are the opposites.
The aggregates of attachment on hearing. At the moment of hearing, obviously there is the ear that can hear. There is also sound that is audible, and consciousness that knows that a sound has been heard. In this consciousness of hearing are included pleasant or unpleasant feeling, perception of the sound, willing and inclining the mind towards the sound to accomplish the act of hearing, and just knowing that a sound has been heard. One who has not had the opportunity to practice mindfulness, and therefore who does not have the true knowledge of reality, becomes attached to all phenomena prominent at the moment of hearing as I, mine, etc. Because of the liability of such attachment, the ear and the material body of sound are known as the aggregates of attachment to form. The pleasant or unpleasant feeling about the sound is the aggregate of attachment to feeling. The perception of sound is the aggregate of attachment to perception. Exercise of the will to hear a sound and inclining the mind towards it is the aggregate of attachment to mental formations. Just knowing that a sound has been heard is the aggregate of attachment to consciousness.
To recapitulate, number one, at the moment of hearing, the ear and sound are the aggregate of attachment to form. Number two, the pleasant or unpleasant feeling about the sound is the aggregate of attachment to feeling. Number three, recognizing or remembering the sound is the aggregate of attachment to perception. Number four, willing to hear the sound and inclining the attention towards it is the aggregate of attachment to mental formations. Number five, just knowing that a sound has been heard is the aggregate of attachment to consciousness. To note as hearing every time a sound is heard enables one to know the said 5 mental and physical aggregates as they really are, and having heard the sound, to remain at the stage of just hearing and not to become attached to it as I or my, as permanent, pleasant, self, etc.
Aggregates of attachment on smelling. At the moment of smelling, there is clearly the material sense base in the nose. There is also the smell and the consciousness that knows the odor. In this consciousness of smelling is comprised the pleasant or unpleasant feeling of smelling, recognition of the odor, exercise of the will to smell, and inclining the attention towards the odor and just knowing the odor. Failure to note as smelling, and to know the phenomenon of smelling as it truly is, results in attachment to it as I, mine, etc. Because of the possibility of such attachments, the nose, the smell, and the consciousness of smelling are known as the aggregate of attachment to form.
To recapitulate, 1. At the moment of smelling, the nose and smell are the aggregate of attachment to form. 2. The pleasant or unpleasant feeling about the odor is the aggregate of attachment to feeling. 3. Recognizing or remembering the odor is the aggregate of attachment to perception. 4. Exercise of the will to smell and inclining the mind towards the odor is the aggregate of attachment to mental formations. 5. Just knowing the odor is the aggregate of attachment to consciousness. To note as smelling, every time an odor is smelt is to know the said 5 mental and physical aggregates as they really are, and having smelt the odor, to remain at the stage of just smelling, and not to become attached to it as I, mine, as permanent, pleasant, or self, etc.
We've reached the end of the first hour, so we will stop our reading there. Thank you to all the members in the stage group that read today. At this point in time, we will now transition to our Q&A portion of our session, where anyone can ask any questions that are related to their meditation practice or regarding Buddhism. Bhante, we have our first question. The question is, before falling asleep, I have been having thoughts which are interesting and meaningful, but also strange, which scares me. I did less vipassana practice, and the strange thoughts stopped. Is there any advice you can share?
Hmm. Interesting and meaningful thoughts is only on a conventional level, only in a worldly sense. Thoughts are only interesting on a practical level in meditation because of their being impermanent, unsatisfying, and uncontrollable. So, not actually interesting at all. The fact that you find them strange is interesting, because strange is a characteristic of impermanence, the uncertainty. It's broadening your horizons to appreciate that reality is not just what you thought it was. Strange things can happen. Anytime something strange happens, the takeaway from it should always be simply impermanence. Oh, even that can happen. Thoughts don't scare you. There's a reaction there's the arising of fear as a result of not just the thought, but the improper attention to the thought. And improper just means without the guard of mindfulness. So the correct response is to note the thought, note the interest in the thoughts, the fact that you're excited about them, surprised by them. All that should be noted. And when you note that, well, it subsides, and there's all of these things are that which triggers the fear. So by noting them, it prevents that triggering of the fear. But even when the fear arises, fear also should be noted, because the fear itself isn't meaningful in any way either. The reason why you stop is because you think the fear has some meaning to it. Yeah, this is fearsome. I should stop because this thing is causing me to be afraid. But there's no meaning behind fear. Fear is just fear. It too arises and ceases. So if you note it, well, it ceases. And then there's no problem. I mean, there never was a problem, is the point. When we make problems out of things, then we have a problem. So the conclusion you seem to have come to is that maybe you should stop practicing meditation because the fear won't arise, because the thoughts won't arise. And all that you're doing is creating stronger aversion towards such things. Whatever it is that triggered the fear, you're reinforcing that triggering. So you'll be more triggered by such things that would cause you to be afraid in the future. You're not dealing with the fear, you're not overcoming it. And the way to do that is to face all of the things that relate to the fear as well as the fear itself.
Bhante, here is the next question. Why is eating meat not against sila? In my mind, buying meat is akin to paying for someone to kill.
But it's not really. That's not all accurate. It would be like saying, suppose there was a nuclear bomb and it blew up a whole city and horrific loss of life. And there was lots of valuable things just completely ownerless. And you went around and picked it up, all that valuable stuff. You went into this city. I mean, I don't know if there's anything left after a nuclear blast, but let's say an ordinary bombing of a city, and putting aside the ethics of who that stuff belongs to, now that, let's say, everyone in the city is dead. Let's say everyone in the country is dead. I mean, something ridiculous, okay? This is just a hypothetical, horrific one. But putting aside the ethics of taking it, you could say, well, it's ownerless, right? In what way is that encouraging future bombing of future cities? Oh, well, we should bomb the cities because people will be able to take their scavengers will be able to come in. You're not in any way encouraging killing, not unless you actively say, hey, thanks for killing, I hope you kill more. You're taking the leftovers of their bad deed. You're taking the scraps, the product of it. Are you benefiting from killing? I mean, intellectually, yes, you could say that, but benefiting from killing is not. It's like if you pick up roadkill on the side of the road, you're benefiting from the animal getting hit by the car. Does that mean you're encouraging more animals to get hit by cars, or you're at all interested in animals getting hit by cars, you could look at it and say, oh, it's terribly unfortunate that this animal got hit by a car. But here is this meat that is ownerless, this body that is ownerless, and it would keep me alive. And it's completely faultless to do that. It might help if you look at samsara as nature. It doesn't matter whether a car hits an animal and it dies, and no one's responsible, or intention and inclination is involved. It has nothing to do with you taking the meat, not intrinsically. Now, that's the ethics of it. The ethics of it is that you take meat, you cook it, hopefully, and you eat it. And none of that has any ethical implications intrinsically. Because all of that can be done with mindfulness, even with kindness, with thoughts of friendliness towards all beings. Certainly can. What you can't do with mindfulness or a clear mind is kill, tell someone to kill, or even encourage someone to kill. Say, hey, go ahead, please kill, or good for you for killing. I mean, I can say these words because I don't mean them, but if you really mean it and express that to someone, yeah, that's unethical for sure. Ethics has nothing to do with the intellectual implications. Oh, if I do this, this might happen. Ethics has to do with your state of mind when you do things. The only really unethical deeds are those that involve unethical states of mind: greed, anger, delusion. And you can't kill or encourage others to kill without those states. Mindfulness just won't let you do it. What I can say is that there are certain activities that Buddhists shy away from and should shy away from. And this relates to what is reasonable. That if you do certain things, even though in and of themselves they're excusable, because you could do them without greed, without anger, without delusion. There's delusion involved, or even greed and anger involved, when you act recklessly or thoughtlessly, when you don't act in ways that lead to harmony and so on. For example, caring for your parents, respecting your elders, relating to others according to societal norms, whatever those may be, and those might be different. So in one society, it's normal to do this. In another society, it's normal to do that. There are norms that are unethical, like the way, for example, women are treated in many societies is blatantly unethical. How Africans were treated by the slave owners in America. I mean, it's not to say that all norms are ethical, but for the most part, following those norms is a sort of a form of ethics. And so following good practices is kind of, it's not exactly ethics kind of ethics, but more like a sign of a clear mind. A person who does these things is who accords with certain norms and behaviors that are reasonable, has a clear mind. So people who buy meat fall into difficulty here because it's not very reasonable to engage with people who are selling meat. It's wrong to sell meat for this very reason. Now, is selling meat intrinsically unethical? I would say no. Selling meat you can do with every instance of selling meat can be mindful. The Buddha told us not to do it. So there is that. And it's convenient, that is conveniently ignored sometimes by Buddhists when they say, no, you can eat meat, it's not breaking the first precept. Sure, absolutely. But when you buy meat, when you engage in this activity, you're not doing anything wrong. You can do it, don't feel guilty about it, but consider, that from a societal standpoint, what is reasonable, as you as an active member of society, it's not really reasonable for a Buddhist to engage like this, to say, well, it's okay, the Muslims are doing the killing, or the Jews are doing the killing, or the atheists are doing the killing. We'll let them do it, because there's a huge accusation that comes there. You're just offloading the killing, right? And you're going along with this. You're saying, yes, our society, let's organize our society in this way, so the Muslims or the Jews, the other religious people, the Hindus, can do the killing. And obviously there's something hypocritical and problematic about that. So a Buddhist who decides not to eat, not to buy meat, I think is probably doing a good thing. We, in our centers, have made it a policy not to buy meat when we do buy food for the meditators, right? Because the monks get food from the villagers, but it's often not quite, I mean, it's usually enough actually, where it was great, but suppose more meditators come, it starts to stretch thin, so, and in other places we've just actually gone ahead and we've had to buy food for meditators. It's just really not enough, or there's just not any food for the meditators unless we buy and even cook food. And so we made a policy not to, for this reason, not to buy meat. That's an example of an extension, you could say an extension of ethics. It's not really ethics, but there's a lot that is unreasonable that you just really shouldn't do as Buddhists. Shouldn't be, shouldn't disregard your parents, as an example. But that it's not it's about being reasonable, because some parents are just horrible people. Your parents were horrible to you, were abusive. It's not, you shouldn't let them live in your house as they get old or something like that. It's just not, there's not value there. So it's not real ethics, but there's good reason for these things, and they relate to good practice. They relate to wisdom, and wise people engage many things the Buddha taught. And he taught to lay people. But it's important to make that distinction between ethics and all of these other finding your way in society.
Bhante, the next question that we have: how can I stop attachment?
You can't, you're stuck with it. You're stuck with attachment. Can't stop it. Well, that's not quite accurate. What I mean to say by that is, you can't just turn it off. You can't focus on the attachment. You have to cut it off at the source, to cut it off before the attachment arises. So it's fine what you say, and it's actually accurate. It's a good question. How can I stop? But be clear about this. All I mean is be clear that you can't just stop the attachment. You have to create the state of mind that neutralizes the trigger that leads to attachment. Basically, in terms of dependent origination, which is one of the books we should read, one of Mahasi Sayadaw's books that we should read after this one. At the moment of feeling, there is a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, or a neutral feeling. There's lots of other things, but feeling is the big one. Pleasant, painful, neutral. And based on that, if there is ignorance, or as I said earlier, the improper attention towards that feeling or the experience that has a feeling in it. There arises craving for it. You like it or dislike it, craving for it to go away. And that inevitably, that unavoidably leads to attachment. So the answer to your question really is have right attention, have proper attention towards the thing that gives rise to craving. That's how you stop it. You can't actually stop attachment. It's true. You have to stop the craving, which is what leads to the attachment, the liking of something or the disliking of something. Because once there's that, there's no stopping the attachment. It comes. People will often say, "I like it, but I'm not attached to it," and it's just not the case. It's not possible. You're growing. Every moment of liking is a growth, an increase in attachment to something. So on a practical level, I don't know if you've done our at-home meditation course. That's where you should start. Read our booklet on how to meditate. That's where you should start. If you've done that, we have an at-home meditation course. You can practice 1 or 2 hours a day and your way through the course. I have an announcement as well that we've been talking about allowing people to retake the at-home course if you've already taken it once, because many people have expressed the wish. So my compromise is that I won't be doing that. I won't be offering the course to people a second time. But if you've done the course with me or someone else, there are several other teachers now. Mila is the newest one, so congratulations to Mila and appreciation to Mila for having the good intention to help others in this way. Good for her. I hope she goes far with it. But her and Edit and others are set up to, her and Edit and Adder, I think is the other one, are set up now to offer the course and even offer it if they're willing. I haven't got confirmation from all of them, but Edit is already doing this apparently. So if you want to take it again, Edit is your person.
Sadhu Tamila. The next question that we have, Bhante. When states of craving arise in meditation, I know that I am supposed to note it, which I do, but there is also the urge to act on that craving and indulge in it. Should this temptation be resisted with willpower?
You can't really. I mean, you can try, but you'll always be thwarted in the end. Willpower is not a thing. It's not a viable solution. The only way is to see it clearly, as I talked about in the answer to the last question. You're supposed to note it, which you do. There's also the urge to act on the craving, which you should also note. And there's also the feelings associated with it, which you should also note. Or the thoughts about it, which you should also note. I mean, you usually don't. Usually you just end up giving in to your craving. But that's the challenge. And it's a lifelong work to get better at and more inclined to actually note things. If you just force yourself, resist it, it can often backfire in terms of make you not want to meditate. Just give in, no? It's just easier. Being a human can be very pleasant. Lots of opportunities for pleasant experiences. Very hard to resist them sometimes. And you really, it's not even that it's hard to resist, it's that resisting them doesn't have any long-term benefit. It can just make you a bitter person, no? You don't get what you want all the time. The true key is to give up the wanting, to block it with mindfulness. Just see more clearly. Not an easy ask, but it's a simple one. A simple task. Just not a very easy one. It's actually pretty easy momentarily. Anyone who picks up meditation can momentarily, as you say, note. Well, you don't say, but what you're missing is when you note it, it does go away just momentarily. Then it comes back. So the challenge is to be devoted and dedicated to clarity, vigilant. Appamadena sampadeta, the Buddha said his last words. Be vigilant. Reach the goal through vigilance, not through doing it once and then saying, oh, I tried and it didn't work. Because it does work. It works momentarily. But it requires more than that. It requires a dedication towards clarity and objectivity and mindfulness.
The next question, Bhante. If a Vipassana yogi loses his or her memory due to Alzheimer's, then can this person still be able to practice noting? If we are in such a situation, what can we do?
No, there's not much you can do. I would hazard a guess that no, you can't really be mindful. I mean, an arahant, if that happens to an arahant, they're just naturally mindful because the potential for delusion and unmindfulness has been cut off. But for the rest of us, we'll be unable to prevent the triggering. Just not able to recognize things. Recognition doesn't arise. My teacher put it simply. He says, give someone a cup of rice and a cup of water. If they can tell the difference between the rice and the water, they can be mindful. That's the extent of it. So if you can't even do that, I would say some people, when their mind is just so gone, they're at best they're in a state of stasis, where nothing's really happening. But at worst, they're angry, afraid, confused. There's not much they can do about it. Scary. If you're not ready for that, then it's a good reason to prepare yourself, because the future is uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen when we get old. Some of it is just biological. You don't know what's going to happen to your brain.
The next question, Bhante. The at-home course requires 2 hours a day. I don't know how to proceed. How could I obtain that time? Is waking up an hour earlier before work the main option, or are there others? I am a bit lost.
I mean, it's not as though I can say, oh, it's okay, don't meditate, and you can do the course. You're asking about doing a meditation course. If you don't have time to meditate, you can't do the course. What we don't expect is that people who finish the course should be able to continue to do 2 hours a day. I would expect an hour a day is pretty reasonable for everybody. But the last 2 weeks are 2 weeks of dedication. It's about approximately the last 2 weeks of the course that we expect you to be at 2 hours a day. And that's a challenge, but it's meant to be a challenge. I mean, if you can't do that, how are you going to find time to do the intensive course? I guess it's a bit insensitive to just leave it there, because some people really are in a situation where they have to work many hours a day and have duties and obligations outside of that. All I can say is find a way, live more simply. For many people, it's about living outside your means and therefore having to work and having to go into debt and so on. Find a way to live more simply. I talked to someone recently who, not a monk, not really even all that dedicated to Buddhism, but he was homeless. He just decided to be homeless. Not homeless, he was homeless by choice. And he just found ways to live. I mean, it's not that noble, but it's kind of, there's a nobility to it in a wild sort of way. I don't know the state of this person's mind, but I had realized that they could do something that was scary to most people. It reminds me, there was this book I read when I was a teenager, I think. I found this book, and it was interesting because by George Orwell, I think was the author, George Orwell, called Down and Out in Paris and London. I've talked about this before because I found it very interesting. It resonated with me as a monk. Where he says, the thing about being completely destitute is he got to the point where he had no money, and no means of making money, and basically no food also. He was living in Paris, and he just completely unable to cope with the economic requirements of his life. He was living on the street, and he said one thing about it was temporary. He wasn't really in any great danger, I don't think, but he realized that it's freeing. Because once you've reached rock bottom, this is like a quote, I'm paraphrasing. Once you reach rock bottom, you realize there's nowhere further you can go. You can't fall any further. A lot of our fear is of losing something that some of this wealth or status that we hold, this safety or security of always getting a meal, always having food to eat, roof over our heads, clothes to wear, all of the things that we would be horrified to have to go without. Anyway, it's kind of a tangent, but not to trivialize your situation or people's situation, but my recommendation is to strive towards a simpler life where you don't have to work so much. And see if there is anything that you're holding on to that requires you to work so much. But I appreciate that for some people it's just do or die. So you can still practice meditation, read the booklet and practice accordingly. You just can't do the at-home course that we offer. So you're able to find time. The at-home course is an extension of the intensive course. What we want is for people to find time to leave the world, come to a meditation center and dedicate themselves intensively, really changing their lives. The at-home course is only meant to prepare you for that. So It's like a test. If you can't do that, you're not ready for the intensive course.
Bhante, the next question. When meditating, my mind is some kind of active due to psych meds. I note it as knowing or active, but it doesn't go away the whole time. Should I go back to the abdomen after some time of noting it? I can't stop meds at the moment. It's for psychosis, but it's hard to see momentary impermanence with these meds.
It's hard to see impermanence anyway. Takes a lot of work, but you'll get there. You may not get there, but you can get there. Nothing disparaging of you, but I can't say whether people are going to succeed, but there is a way forward. And impermanence is right there. Things are changing all the time. Try and note at least until you see that. Keep noting it until you see something change about your attitude towards it, about the way you perceive it. And then go back. If there's anything you think that's not changing, try and challenge that. Dispel that myth or that illusion and see it actually change. Something about it. And then you can go back to the rising and fall. Try and note in general when you're distracted, you can say distracted when there's lots of different thoughts and it's not stopping. Try and note the other emotions if there's liking or disliking or worry or fear or doubt. Note all of those as well.
The next question, Bhante. I was wondering how, if so, one could determine whether identity view has been intellectualized or actually has been realized.
I'm confused. You think we want to actually realize identity view? I don't know what you mean by identity view, but it sounds bad. It doesn't sound very Buddhist. We don't strive to realize identity view. We strive to see non-self, that all of reality is made up of experiences that are momentary, arising and ceasing. There's no view we're striving for at all. We're striving for right view, which means seeing things as they are without any interpretation or philosophizing, conceptualizing, with no view whatsoever. Just view, view like you see it.
Bhante, the next question. Can things we like not be suffering? There is a beautiful garden, but I don't want it. I appreciate what it is, then it goes. Is this clinging to the aggregates? Attachment to consciousness?
I mean, you can couch it in whatever words that you like, but there's nothing about the garden that is beautiful. There's nothing about the garden that is a garden. It's just experiences of seeing, smelling, and there's your appreciation. But that appreciation, I mean, still liking. And it may not seem like it's leading to attachment, but it's feeding into your preference. You prefer beautiful gardens to ugly things. An arhat doesn't have that preference. They're just as happy. They're equally at peace and happy in a cesspool and a beautiful garden. Things you like are not suffering. Suffering is, as the Buddha said, not getting what you like. The things that you like are suffering in the sense that by the word suffering, we mean that which is capable of triggering or leading to suffering because you like it. Not even capable, will lead to suffering because you like it. Because you can't always get what you want. It's just a fact of life that if you didn't want those things, you wouldn't be upset when they're gone. You wouldn't be bored or disappointed or dissatisfied when they didn't come or something else comes that you dislike. The question is, do you need the beautiful garden to be happy? Or if you never saw another beautiful garden in your life, would you be equally happy? If I threatened you and said, from now on you're forbidden from seeing another beautiful garden ever again, would that be a sadness for you? That's what tells you whether there's clinging. But I mean, it's not possible. Liking absolutely does feed that. If you like it a little bit, it feeds it a little bit. If you like it a lot, it feeds it a lot. And if you like it again and again and again and again, it feeds it again and again and again. There's nothing wrong with a beautiful garden, just like there's nothing wrong with a smelly cesspit, cesspool. I mean, that's actually not quite true, but practically speaking, there's nothing wrong with them. But no, not even practically. It has to be stressed that it's not about seeing these things as good in any way. Ultimately, it's about rejecting them, giving them up. Giving up the cesspit, the cesspool, giving up the beautiful garden, not needing for anything or for anything to not come. But they are all to be rejected, to be discarded, to not be seen as having any meaning or implication or value in them or in regards to them. So like with a cesspit, there's no value in trying to avoid the cesspit. There's no intrinsic value. Now, practically speaking, you don't want to jump in the cesspool. There's lots of reasons for that. One thing I could say about gardens that I've said about nature, one of the great things about nature is what it isn't. It isn't jarring. It is comforting. It's familiar to our psyche. It's familiar to our bodies. Our bodies are, how many millions of years have we gone living in nature? This body has grown, has evolved in conjunction with that nature. That's why it's so soothing and familiar to us. And so there is an aspect of nature that has value for a beginner meditator. Let's say an advanced meditator won't have as much concern. For a new meditator, there is value with practicing in nature because it's more comfortable, less difficult, less triggering. But when you talk about a beautiful garden, there is that aspect of it. You don't need a garden, but nature in general. without the mosquitoes, for example.
Bhante, the next question that we have: can the Venerable explain Rupa Upadanakanda and Vijnana Upadanakanda in relation to the attachment that was explained earlier?
I don't really understand. I'm not quite sure which attachment you're referring to. But well, we attach to both. I mean, we've talked a little bit. Mahasi Sayadaw talked a little bit about how we attach to both. Rupa is form. So, for example, with the beautiful garden, you're attached to the sights, smells, even the sounds. Those are all rupa. Vijnana, you can be attached to wanting to see the garden again, being excited about going back to the garden. I don't think this is, I don't imagine this is the attachment. Maybe it is what you're talking about. But any attachment in general, any experience in general can be attached to.
The next question, Bhante: how to deal with feelings that do not pass during meditation? Should I always go back to the breath even if another feeling arises? How to deal with multiple arising phenomena during meditation?
If there's many things, you can often just note distracted, or restless if the mind is jumping from one thing to another. But there's no magic answer as to what is going to be the right way to practice. You have to just sort of generalize and be reasonable. A reasonable thing to do is after some time, when it feels like the feeling is not just not going to go away, just go back to the rising and falling. We don't recommend noting sensations until they go away or for any long period of time. If it's just a physical sensation of stiffness or heat or hardness or something like that, I just note it a few times and then go back. But if it's a feeling like pain, pleasure, calm, you should try to note them until they go away. And after a long time, if they don't go away, then go back to the rising and falling. But if you're interrupted by something else, you can note it. If you're interrupted by many things, you should start to note distracted. It means the mind is not focused.
The next question, Bhante: can there also be noting of wholesome things unrelated to current experience, such as saying Araham, Araham, thinking of Buddha's qualities, etc.?
Yes, there can be. That's called samatha meditation, because your object is not experience. It's not present. It's not a part of your reality, conceptual. So what it leads to is tranquility, It leads to calming the mind, but it doesn't lead to seeing clearly. It doesn't lead to wisdom. And in and of itself, it's not enough to lead to enlightenment without that wisdom.
The next question, Bhante. What is the causal chain that leads from neutral feeling, neither pleasant nor unpleasant, to craving for pleasant feelings, subtle aversion to the neutral feeling?
No, there's craving for the neutral feeling. Not craving, it's liking of the neutral feeling. Liking leads to clinging or attachment, let's say. That's why they're as the Mahasi Sayadaw said, that's why neutral feelings are categorized in this the same as pleasant feelings. They're grouped together with pleasant feelings because you like both of them. When calm feelings arise, you like those. When pleasant feelings arise, you like those. This is standard Abhidhamma. Liking can arise with a neutral feeling, and it can arise with a pleasant feeling. It cannot rise with an unpleasant feeling. You cannot have a liking with a unpleasant feeling. So they are both in the same category.
The next question, Bhante. Regarding your explanation to why is eating meat not against sila, does it also apply to those individual investors making investments in companies that manufacture weapons that are used in wars? As a Buddhist, is this something one should avoid, for example, for retirement?
I think it's reasonable to avoid such things. I don't think you have to go to great extremes, but that seems like a clear case where there are other options. You're making money off of war. You're profiting off of war. Not a great thing. I mean, the stock market in general or investments in general are problematic, but problematic in the same way that, sex is problematic, or I don't know, sex is more problematic, but same way that cooking is problematic. Not in the same way, but investments are problematic because they're very much tied up with obsession with money and wealth, fear of losing your money and wealth. Things like that in ordinary life, that if you want a technical answer, technically you're giving rise to lots of unwholesome states, but practically speaking, it won't necessarily deeply impact even your practice of meditation. Just something to be aware of, that in the long term, it's not going to be very compatible. worrying about your investments and the practice of Buddhism. Best is to give up all your money, put on rag robes, pick up a bowl, shave your head and beard, have a beard, and go forth. Think of that as the ideal worldly solution, like a conceptual solution. It's easy to see whether you're going towards that or away from it. Investments are reasonable, but kind of going away. I mean, reasonable in the sense of it's understandable that people are concerned about their investments, but going away from giving up everything aspect of Buddhism, which is kind of the core of Buddhism. So it's not the best solution. But certainly when you compare ordinary investments with investments that are unethical, and by unethical I mean in a worldly sense unethical, a Buddhist shouldn't really engage in such quote-unquote unethical funds. My mother used to invest in ethical funds. I remember she had a long time ago. When I was a kid, I remember her talking about her portfolio was very ethical. That's a very good Buddhist thing to do if you're involved in investments. I I talked to a Thai man who explained to me some of his investments. I said, that's just gambling. Oh, he was so not happy with me. I mean, not exactly not happy with me, but he was kind of, it was a bitter pill to swallow. He wasn't actually unhappy. He kind of appreciated what I said and said, oh, that hurts. He was just gambling. Like they do this shorts. You know what a short is? Many of you, I'm sure, know what a short is. Explained it to me. I don't remember that. Wait. You buy, I forget, it's shorts. Look up shorting stock. It's like the opposite of investing or something like that. And it just sounds very much like gambling. I mean, it basically is gambling. Not basically, it is gambling. And so, yeah, that's not a very Buddhist thing to do.
The next question, Bante. Is there any lasting progress that is made before enlightenment? I am not enlightened, but notice many extreme emotions don't arise at all anymore.
You've answered your own question. The one thing to note is that it's not permanent, not necessarily. It's an indication that you're going in the right direction for sure, and it's a great thing. It's going to have long-term consequences in this life and the next, and in many lives to come. This could change many lifetimes, and it could change countless not countless, but a finite number of lifetimes in the future, large number of lives into the future. That's great. But ultimately, it's not in and of itself permanent. That's the only difference. At enlightenment, it's a certainty. You never head in the other direction anymore. That's why it's called a stream. You've entered the stream. It's inevitable. It's like you've fallen out of the plane, you're going to hit the ground. That's not a good analogy, but you can't get back in the plane. Or you broke the dam, you can't put it back together. Broke the vase, you broke the jar, the milk is no, I don't know. There's a crack. Enlightenment is actually making the crack. It's broken.
Bhante, we have time for one more question for today. The question is it that when there is no challenge, there is no growth?
Yes, I think the answer is yes. Because growth means change. So if it's something that's familiar to you, something that is comfortable to you, then there's nothing new that can be gained from that, right? It's only when you challenge your current perspective that change arises. And that challenge is often very uncomfortable. But the challenge is intrinsic to the growth. Doesn't mean it has to be painful. Doesn't even have to be necessarily difficult. It's not, for some people, it's not that difficult to challenge themselves. They can just pose the question, investigate, and challenge their, and see that they were wrong. You have to see that you were wrong. This is the point. To become enlightened, you have to see that you were wrong. You have to be wrong. If you're not enlightened, you're wrong. Your perspective is wrong. That's the definition of not being enlightened. And so you have to challenge that. You have to change. You have to see right. And that seeing right changes you.
Okay, that will conclude our Dhamma group session for today. I just want to personally thank everyone in attendance today. There's many of us here in Discord and on YouTube. Thank you for everyone for sticking around for the reading and for asking questions for our Q&A. And a big special thanks to Venerable Yuttadhammo himself for sharing his insight and wisdom. Thank you so much, Bhante. Before I pass the microphone, I just want to make a big reminder that we have our annual general meeting tomorrow for Sunday, same time, 6:30 p.m. Sri Lanka time, but set for Sunday. If anyone is interested, you can definitely come and attend and join us. Thank you again, Bhante.
Well, thank you all. Thank you, Sibitsu, for leading the group and doing the broadcast. To all of our readers for taking part and offering us your voice to give voice to these ancient teachings and Mahasi Sayadaw's modern explanations of them. And to all of you behind the scenes who are aiding in the broadcast, those of you who are organizing questions and so on, thank you as well. Much appreciation to all of that. This is great work, and I think we're starting to see that people appreciate it. People are talking about it, and we have an increase in people on Discord and an increase in people on YouTube, which is encouraging. It encourages us to continue. We see that people are clearly benefiting from it. Much appreciation to everyone who joined. Those of you who join on YouTube and in Discord. This isn't just a matter of us feeling happy that people like what we say and, oh, look at the numbers go up. It's an appreciation of the goodness because we believe, we're confident in the goodness of the message, the value of the message, that this is the turning of the wheel of the Dhamma. Right? Imagine something that didn't exist in the world, that you couldn't find anywhere. Go onto find this sage that had been living on the mountain for decades. Go to the wisest professor in the university. Find anyone. Go to talk to Socrates. None of these people had this. There was nothing similar to. It was Socrates after Buddha, but sure. Anyway, there was nothing like Buddhism. And then suddenly there was light. This is what these teachings are very special. So for some of the people here, these are new as well. For most of us, we're learning new things. We're noticing things that we didn't notice before. We're hearing things for the first time. There's great value in that. And look at more people. Just think, more people are hearing these things. This is why we do this, and this is why we're happy that there are people here. And why we should all be happy that we're here. We should be happy for ourselves. Feel good that, oh, we have gained something from this. Even those of us who are very familiar with these teachings, have even read Mahasi Sayadaw's works before. That doesn't nullify the benefit. Repetition, review, all of these things are essential for growth and for benefit from the teachings. Go over them again to remind ourselves, because remember what sati is, it's to remember. So if you remind yourself of good things, it's the same idea. You go back, you reinforce, and the good increases. There's great power and great benefit, and I want to appreciate and impress upon everyone here that we should all appreciate for ourselves the goodness that we gain from the work that we have done. You've all done work just to be here. Something that is outside of ordinary life, outside of the Panchupadana Kanda, the 5 aggregates of clinging. What would we be doing otherwise? Probably clinging to something, probably seeking out something pleasurable, getting upset about things that are displeasurable. Instead, we are here striving to get a better understanding and a better clarity to support our practice of good things. So, wish for the benefit of all of these good things, all of the good that has been performed on this day, on this occasion, by all the volunteers, by myself, and by all of you. The power of all of that and the power of our appreciation of the goodness, which is a goodness in and of itself, along with all of the good deeds that you have all done in this life. Any generosity, ethics, and meditation you have done, any other good deeds that you have done in this life, and all goodness you have performed in the past that's allowed you to be born as a human, born in the time of the Buddha Sasana, born with a healthy body and a mind that is able to understand these teachings and appreciate them. All of that goodness, along with the greatness of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, may all of this be a protection for us. Protect us from sickness, protect us from suffering, protect us from danger, protect us from fear, protect us from disease, protect us from misfortune, enmity, evil. May it support us in our cultivation of good things. May it bring us good things in this life, long life, health, happiness, and strength. May it bring us clarity in the moment of death, that we might find happiness in future existences. May it bring us a future that is bright, a future that is progressive and one of improvement, a future that is one of greatness. And may it guide us to have a strong mind, dedicated and focused on good things, and the cultivation of the Buddha's teaching. And may it ultimately lead us to the realization of true peace, happiness, and freedom from suffering, which is Nibbana, the cessation of suffering. Sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.